DNVR Avalanche podcast, back for another preview edition of the playoffs, as there are now only 4 teams remaining. The conference finals are upon us. Megan, Jesse, Rudo, AJ coming to you live from the DNVR bar, getting ready for whatever remains
Found that this morning
in the playoffs.
I remember that game.
I do too.
What game was that?
This I'll tweet it just to, for the vibes. Yeah.
Anyway, let's start with the East. We'll get to the Western side of things in a little bit, but on the East side, it's Carolina and Florida.
Oh man, now I look like such a fool.
Yeah,
I didn't even see that was in there.
You didn't put your predictions in,
nope,
slacker.
Never even saw it.
Yikes.
Carolina, I don't think is all that surprising that they are here, other than they've battled through some key injuries in their lineup to make it here.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton to say about this team. I think we've talked about them in the first 2 rounds. They kind of play a pretty boring brand of hockey, but it's functional.
They've seemed to me like a version of the Seattle Kraken that are just a few more years along. I don't know. It's just so funny though, because I actually kind of look at Carolina as like Dallas East, where it's just like, they're always here. They're always hanging around. You expect them to go deep, but it's never really anything special. I don't know. It's just like, I'm kind of over. And like, do it or don't. Stop hanging around here.
Yeah.
My question,
Tell 'em.
Let's start here. Was Carolina's route just easy? Because the Islanders were not a particularly tough out. Sorry, AJ. And then New Jersey was a team that clearly just isn't there yet. Not that they're bad, but they just weren't ready for second-round hockey yet.
I think I wouldn't describe it as easy, because I do think in the absence of Svechnikov, they have had more production than I anticipated from them. But I think some of that, especially looking at the New Jersey series coming recently, is because of what struggles they had in net. And I think that's what's going to be difficult for Carolina against Florida, is I think Bobrovsky is a more veteran goaltender, and so they're not going to capitalize on a weakened Vanacek or a Schmid who's just too new, too green for the playoffs. And for that reason, I don't know if the production keeps up against an experienced Florida team in that same way. But I do think that even in, like you mentioned, the key injuries, even in a big absence, they performed better than I expected, though some of it is just because of how they are designed to play. I think it's very smart and simple hockey. And so I think that's why they've made it this far, too. It's definitely to their own credit. But I think some of what they've been able to do offensively has been a step up from what I expected.
You
Sorry.
do. No, you're good. You do want or worry about, if you're Carolina, Megan was just mentioning the injuries, and we've talked for so many years about they don't have the high-end scoring, and this year they went out and got some, but it's all injured. And you just wonder, playing against Matthew Tkachuk, Reinhart, Brandon Montour, are they going to have the high-end horses to be able to hang when the games get tight and you need a guy to go out there and take over a shift and put one in the back of the net? Do they have the guys to do that? It may be Groundhog's Day for the Hurricanes here in the Eastern Conference Final.
So part of what I wonder about on the flip side, Florida has no pressure for the rest of these playoffs. They're a team that nobody thought was going to be here. There are no expectations on that hockey team. They get to go out and play free every single night, no matter what the score is, no matter what the standing of the series is. They weren't supposed to beat Boston. They weren't even supposed to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I really think Florida has...
Talk about a game-changing moment at the end of the season, like a league-changing moment.
Yep.
With Chicago beating Pittsburgh that keeps
Pittsburgh out.
It puts Chicago in the place where it did, where they won the lottery.
Yep.
It keeps Pittsburgh out of the postseason. It allows Florida to get in, who then upsets Boston and Toronto. Like, what a seismic game at the end of the year, where you're like the immediate implications of that game alone are massive.
And it could lead to huge changes in Toronto and personnel
and it's kind of
management.
Like, it's kind of like that crazy Marc-Andre Fleury save that he made a couple years ago against the Maple Leafs that led to them firing Mike Babcock, and which led to firings elsewhere because a bunch of stories of abusive coaches came out immediately after. And it's crazy how quickly some of these things can just shift a landscape in the NHL. And that when you look at that one game at the end of the year, Pittsburgh, Chicago, and have nothing to play for against a team that's just trying to get in, and you blow it at the third period, and this is what happens from it. It's crazy to me.
And at the time, it was just like, oh man, Pittsburgh kind of choked away. They don't know how to control their own destiny.
Totally.
And now it's like 4 different franchises just changed because of that.
Yeah, including Pittsburgh.
Yeah, they fired a bunch of people.
Yeah,
The butterfly
they're
effect
trying to hire Toronto's GM. Like,
yeah. Oh, that's funny.
That how it happened. Florida certainly. Chicago probably benefited from it more technically, but
I mean, I think
We'll see
how
what
this
happens
run
here.
goes.
Florida,
We'll see how this run
and
goes.
I would say you say Florida's playing with no pressure, but you get to a conference final, you may never be back. You don't know how long it's going to be.
When was the last time they were there?
96.
Right.
So, you're looking at it, and obviously this is a very different group. This group actually has the talent to be here.
Yeah.
Not like that 96 group. Like, there was a reason we never heard from that team again.
Yeah.
Because they defined, like, that fluke run that year.
6 hot months for Van Briesbroek, and that was it for that team.
Yeah, and I mean, like, a bunch of role players that just popped off just enough.
Yeah.
But this is not that Florida Panthers. I mean, Makachuk is the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Reinhart and Verhaeghe and Barkov, those guys up front are no joke. Defensively, they've been very, very good.
Montour continues to just be
Yeah, well,
electric
I mean,
this year.
between Montour and
Ekblad has stayed healthy.
yeah, and Radko Gudas has been involved in
Yeah,
some game-changing plays. The series-ending goal. Radko Gudas is leading the
He's
rush up
driving
the
the
ice.
net, yeah.
You're like, man, this is just a different reality here. They are so good, and their high-end talent is legit. And I just think the one thing is that you're looking at Sergei Bobrovsky, and you don't trust him.
I mean, that's
because
our-
you've watched him over the last 5 years, where on any given day the wheels can fall off.
What's so crazy about him though is, I think he has a range that goes from you don't trust him to maybe the best goalie
he's
left
the
in the
new
playoffs.
Marc-Andre
Yeah,
Fleury.
he's a top 5 goaltender when he's locked in. You're like,
Right.
this guy's spectacular.
Right, he could legitimately out-duel Jake Ottinger, or he
give
could
up
cost
7.
you a series.
Yeah.
Like his range is legitimately that wide.
Yep.
That's the reason we have him as the X factor for Florida. So it just makes sense because you don't know what you're going to get out of the number 1 cop.
The other thing that I do,
Top cop.
mention the no pressure and things. I'm with AJ a bit that I think the no pressure thing starts to run out the deeper you go, because now it's
Yeah.
like, well, now you're here.
You're here.
You're not the underdog anymore. You're here. It would have been the same thing with Seattle had they won last night, where it's like, at a certain point, like, yes, it's house money, but you don't want to lose at this point. Like, now you're this far into it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to lose. What's scary to me, and I said it coming out of that first round about Florida, is they do kind of have like we're playing fast and loose, but they also have the high-end talent. And then the part that I do think we've maybe just forgotten a little bit, or at least we had up until this point, was like they won the President's Trophy last year. Mm-hmm. Right now, they are barreling towards keeping a trend that held up for the last 2 Stanley Cup champions of you have to win the President's Trophy and lose in spectacular fashion to come back and win the Stanley Cup the next year.
That's the rule.
So what you're telling me is put a lot of money on Boston next year?
Yeah. If Florida wins, it'll be 4 years running.
Yeah.
But, like, this is a good team that has kind of been here. They've gone through the lesson of, tough losses and making tweaks and, where you have to be better and where you have to be mentally tough, the deeper you goes.
The difference of Makachuk and Jonathan Huberdeau. You talk about a playoff-like style player.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to come down on Huberdeau, who's great, but Makachuk is a guy that from the moment he was born was built for postseason hockey.
Yeah. Well, there's the Jeff
And we're
Merrick
seeing it now.
uses the line. I don't remember who the GM is that he quotes all the time, but there's 2 types of players. There's players that get you there, and then there's players that get you through. And like Matt Tkachuk is both of those dudes.
Yep.
He'll get you there, and then he'll drag you
And
through.
he did get him there because he mounted like a very late Hart campaign, just dragging this Panthers team into the postseason.
Yeah.
And then once they got there, it didn't look great. They were down 3-1 to Boston. Since being down 3-1 to Boston, they've totally caught fire.
I think, too, in Rudo talking about Carolina's path here, you compare it alongside Florida's path here, and the quality of competition that Florida has faced thus far has been Boston and Toronto. And so that is one reason that I think that probably better primes them for this, though I think that the mentality does shift gear to a more serious tone. I think it's been serious, but after Boston, I think the Toronto series is where they started to loosen their grip just a little bit. But it has to be such a confidence builder, too, that I think is going to benefit them having played two really good teams leading up to this.
Two really good teams that have playoff experience, that have been here, that have veteran players and stuff like that. Again, not to take anything away from Carolina, but New York is they're trying to get back, right? They missed last year. It was a really rough year for them. They're trying to figure out that process again and how to go on a deep run. New Jersey, I think we all agree, fun, exciting team. They're just not there. They're not there yet. Yeah, they'll be back. But this year, it
was too early.
Right. I was surprised they beat New York. You know what I mean? It's not taking anything away from them. It's just once you get into the playoffs, there's just a different gear you have to find. This was that group's first time doing it. Megan, I think you're right. When you compare the two teams that they went, it's not necessarily these teams were good, these teams were bad, but they're just on very opposite ends of the spectrum. Florida's gone through teams that had legitimate Stanley Cup aspirations. Carolina went through two teams that were like, hey, we're happy to be here and we're going to see what kind of damage we can do.
Yeah.
I've said a little bit on Twitter that I think Florida could be that team of destiny because it's not just the teams they went through. You look at that Toronto series especially, and every break is going their way. Toronto goals are getting disallowed. They're getting a series-winning goal from Nick Cousins. It just seems like every single thing has broken Florida's way. Deservedly so. I'm not saying they're a bad team.
I mean, that's how it goes, though.
Of course.
You get deep into the postseason because some things go your way in the world of breaks. I continue to be frustrated by the world, the hockey world, just wanting to deny that luck determines outcomes regularly.
More so in hockey than any other sport.
Any of the other sports, man. It's just such a giant factor where you walk in and you just say, well, did we get lucky? When you watch, and I know we're going to talk about it later, but when you watch Seattle and Dallas Game 7 last night, the same thing. It's the same Game 7.
Yeah.
Seattle gets housed in Game 7.
A goal doesn't get randomly punched into Dallas's own
but
net.
They don't get the all-time great bounce of a double deflection off of two stars players into its own net. And a team that can't come from behind gets gifted a lead it didn't deserve. You just look at it, and luck just determines so many things in the NHL on a regular basis. And you do look at where is Carolina? You talk about luck. I mean, I disagree with your characterization of the Islanders series because you look at how close that series could have been flipped had they made a correct call on two high sticking plays. Which resulted in a game-winning goal for Carolina in an overtime game. You flip that game, are the Hurricanes here?
Yeah.
So, you have to get a little bit lucky along the way. And where I really like what Carolina does is that they're kind of a hockey equivalent of an anaconda. They're just going to wrap. They're just going to wrap themselves around your offense, and they're just going to squeeze the life out of you, and they're going to do just enough. I don't know when Jordan Martinook became a Conn Smythe winner, or a Conn Smythe contender at least, but he's here. They're here because he's here. You look at what the Hurricanes do well, and it all starts with they play spectacular defense. They forecheck the crap out of you. And that's what both Florida and Carolina do, is that both of them forecheck like maniacs. And I'm going to be really curious to see in the ultimate, it's a game of mistakes in the NHL, which one of these teams is able to force the other into uncomfortable situations, and which forecheck kind of wins the day. Because I think that when you look at the puck-moving ability on the back end of Carolina, you think, I look at it and I say I'm a lot more comfortable with the Hurricanes' defense being able to consistently do it, top to bottom. Obviously Montour and Ekblad I fully trust can do some things, but I love the Hurricanes defense top to bottom, and I remember as soon as I picked New Jersey to win last round against them, I was like, I'm a moron. Defense always beats offense in the postseason. It just does. Mm-hmm. If you can shut down teams that live and die by scoring, yeah, if you can live and die by, if you're living and dying by scoring, eventually you're going to die by it.
Yep.
And Carolina starts with its own spectacular defense in its own zone, and that's where I trust.
Well, and
I'm excited to see how these guys match. Jacob Slavin going against a Matt Tkachuk. Like, you're talking about elite players doing what they do at the absolute peak of their abilities in a conference final. This is going to be a great series.
Well, I just wanted to build on going back to the luck. I would actually even argue that to win the Stanley Cup, it takes a lot of luck. It takes a lot of bounces going your way. And in hockey, again, I think there's, like you said, AJ, there's so much luck involved on every play. I mean, literally right down to what angle does that puck that you shot hit the post at?
Uh-huh.
Like, it's that little. The margins are that small.
Look at the cup-winning goal last year.
Yep.
Right.
McKinnon passes it to the wrong guy.
Right.
And it just goes off a dude's foot, and Lehkonen just
hammers it. Yeah.
He's just like, well, we're going to put this somewhere, and it just happens to be top shelf on him, and it's a rolling puck where we all know what happens when a guy takes just a swat at a rolling puck. Mm-hmm. Anything can happen. It ended up a perfect shot, and it ends up being the last goal of the season.
And it's just there's so much stuff like that I just wanted to build on that.
Yeah.
The crazy luck factor, as frustrating as it can be at times, like that's part of what makes hockey so fun.
I think
that's so great.
That's what makes it so great in the postseason.
So
well, not even just the postseason, just hockey in general.
Let's see how we decided
it's like
crazy
the second
luck's
show in a row.
work.
He's just like, and your conversation's done. I'm moving on from this.
Your conversation was over. It was ending.
Is this a podcast? Is it just? Are we just talking, or is this just?
Did you have more to say?
I was literally in the middle of a sentence.
You literally finished your sentence, and I said, "Okay, let's move on."
Go.
Now you have to tell us what your predictions are because you didn't get them
I know. I'm sorry. I was getting them in, then Rudo interrupted me, and so I couldn't.
Just do what I did and copy Rudo's.
Damn it! I actually, it's Florida in 6. Yeah, is what I've got.
All right. AJ, you're the one who goes Carolina here. Sell us on it.
And I pick it in 7 because I just think it's going to be a great series.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to feel coming in about either one of the goaltending tandems because I don't trust either of them. I just don't trust either of these tandems to be.
I think they neutralize each other in terms of where I feel with both of them.
Right. And when I look at it, I didn't do it last round where I was like, I'd love this Jack Hughes and all these guys that can score goals and they can do all that and they're so explosive and they're this and they're that, and I'm just looking at Carolina and I'm going, I've been a hater for like 10 years on these guys. I'm just gonna pick them, and that way I can continue my streak of getting everything wrong.
You got Dallas.
Yeah.
Go me. So it's tough for me. Would not be surprised if my prediction ends up being wrong here. I'm just picking Florida. Again, I think they're the team of destiny. I think every break is going their way. More importantly, I think they're winning the war of attrition. They are skating through the injuries they've had have been like, he misses one game and he comes back, or not even a game.
Getting Carolina back though could be could help.
How back is he with a broken hand?
Yeah, that's fair.
See, I don't know. I do think you're selling Florida a little short with Team of Destiny getting every break.
Not that they're bad. I think they're very good as well.
But if you're good and lucky, you're real hard to stop. You're real hard to stop.
I'll say I just think that they're playing really well right now. Like I think all of their guys are peaking when you need them to.
I agree.
I agree with all of this.
and that's to me what makes them scary is that there's no guys like fighting through it right now. Like they're all revved up and going. And it's just interesting. And Bobrovsky's had a lot of time off here in between these two series to rest up.
Yeah, so now he's bad again.
I think that might be part of it, is if you get into game one and you see one side's goaltender fall apart, you go, well, this series might be over.
Yeah.
Although, game 2, the other side's goaltending could fall apart.
Fair.
And that's been I hope with as strong defensively as Carolina is and the way that Florida has played in these playoffs, I hope we can get a series where, to AJ's point, this is just a good series.
Yeah, please not trading blowouts.
With however many games this goes, just quality games. That Vegas-Edmonton series kind of sucked.
Dude, it was not fun to watch because it was just trading beats.
You were
game was over
disinterested
and
by the
halfway
second
through,
period,
yeah.
right? You were disinterested after every second period until Game 6. I was the only one that kept you remotely interested for the entire 60 minutes. I don't want more series like that. Like I'm over 6-1, 5-1, 7-2, 5-1. It's like, can we stop? Can we just stop with this and have some fun playoff hockey?
Close.
On that note, if you want to get tickets to your next game, be it playoffs or otherwise, you can do it with Game Time. You use the link down in the description of this video. Yeah, this is a video. Use code DNVR when you get onto the site to get $20 off your purchase. Game Time can get you tickets up to 60% off full face value. So go check it out. Go get your tickets, whether it be to the Nuggets conference finals. If you want to get in on that, you can get a great deal with Game Time. Or any other sport. If you want to get tickets for like literally $1 to go to Rockies games, yeah.
Saw
you can
the
do
tickets
that.
for the Hurricanes in the Upper Bowl were in the $100.
That's
Wow.
not too crazy.
For a conference final? Are you
Yeah,
serious, man?
that's
That's
awesome.
great value.
That's insane.
So there you
Great
go.
value.
If you're out there and you want to catch some sick hockey, Game Time's the way to do it. Over 15 million people have used this app, so it's pretty out there at this point. Go get with the fam. Use the DNVR code. Use the link down in the description. Get your Game Time. Get your Game Time app. Get your tickets. You're good to go. And then, when you're hanging out down by the DNVR bar, make sure you're getting yourself a delicious burrito, too, with Illegal Pete's. As Illegal Pete's has you covered with the fresh ingredients, queso to die for, fantastic margaritas, you name it. They've got you covered. Happy hour, 3 to 6 p.m. at Illegal Pete's. And then, Nuggets game starts at what, 6:30 now? Is that for the conference final? So,
Yeah, another big lotto tonight.
whew, who's going to win that one?
Not Chicago.
Could you imagine if they win both? That would be hilarious.
They can't.
I know they can't, but could you imagine if,
No.
That's never happened, right?
I don't know, actually.
Two teams in the same city winning the lottery?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
It's a
can't.
good question.
I can't remember it ever happening, but I've never followed the basketball lottery that close.
Well,
so
I can
don't
tell
know.
you it's never happened for the Nuggets.
I have never won any lottery.
They've
yet.
never even moved up, man.
Yep.
So
The only thing I can think is maybe if New Jersey and then like the Nets won it recently. Like those are the only two
They
teams
were
I can think that were
perennially
like bad
for a while.
Yeah, at the same time.
I don't know. Yeah, I
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look, but I don't think I'm not off the top of my head.
because Columbus never won it. Not that I mean,
Well, they
Cleveland's
don't have a
technically
team.
not Columbus, but they're in the same state.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow, this is interesting.
anyway, moving on from there. Get your Illegal Pete's 10 different locations here.
Maybe no, not even that.
No,
I
he's
was
got
gonna say a
nothing.
California team and like the fucking like Sacramento Kings, but
No lottery when it comes to Illegal Pete's. Go get your burritos instead.
so true.
Second period of the DNVR Avalanche
This
podcast.
giant chess piece they just have sitting.
Moving to the West with Vegas and
It was a weird
Dallas. Yeah, it definitely said Eastern, but that's okay.
Doesn't matter.
Vegas, I don't think anyone is all surprised, made it here. They had Winnipeg, which was a pretty easy series for them. And then Edmonton was a legit challenge, but as Jesse was already describing, God, was that series boring.
Disappointing.
It was disappointing, dude. It was just honestly. I saw a quote from Connor McDavid this morning saying like, "No, this was progress. Like we're a better team." And it's like you guys have gone out with a whimper 2 years in a row with the two most prolific offensive players the league has seen since Wayne Gretzky, and you guys have just laid down with no fight 2 years in a row.
Since probably Lemieux and Yager, yeah.
Yeah.
An argument for another day, perhaps.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Which, since 1993, wow.
I don't hard disagree either way. But it's just like, that series, disappointing, I think is the right word. Like, I really was. I was even sold on Edmonton. I was like, you know what, guys? I'm coming around. I'm back in. I'm back on board. These two guys are just going off.
That's why they lost.
100-something points each. I picked against them. I picked Vegas to win. And I said, their defense is looking better. And they came out and it was just the same thing over again for Edmonton. No goaltending. The defense was a mess. And Vegas, again, just steady, consistent.
Well, so
did the same thing over and over.
Here's my question looking forward, and Megan, I want to throw this one to you. Can they survive just whatever in goal? Can they do that through the conference? But they've done it through 2 rounds. Can they keep getting away with that with an Aiden Hill in net or whatever it ends up being in this series?
It's hard to say. It kind of feels like how we've talked about goaltending generally for these playoffs is anything could happen. Like Ottinger not looking quite like Ottinger has also happened. And so I'm not going to bet against Aiden Hill. Do we have any idea, too, if Logan Thompson is going to return at all, ever? Not in his career, just like for the playoffs.
I have no idea what his status is.
I can't, even if he was back for game 1, you have to go to Hill, right? At least initially.
After that game 6,
I was going to say he was so good for them, in the back half of that, and especially with Logan Thompson having not played in the playoffs yet. I just think if you're going if he is coming back and if you're going to him, something has gone wrong. And that's not a slight on Logan Thompson.
It's more so I want to know, what's the option behind Aiden Hill? Like
Jay Quick, baby.
Oh,
yeah. It's Jonathan Quick.
It's obviously a real problem.
His pads look sick.
Dude, imagine going to your 6th-string goaltender in a conference final.
That's tough.
It's so impressive Vegas is even here. It's so impressive.
Is that kind of where you're going with that? Just like the fact that they've gotten here, even the regular season, in spite of everything?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because AJ brought it up, they're 4 goaltenders deep at this point. That is kind of ridiculous that they've actually had okay goaltending throughout this point, even in spite of that fact. And then there are other things going well, some lucky breaks, but there are things going well in front of them too. I think kind of similar to what we saw with some of Florida's top players showing up. That's what I'm seeing with Vegas too, especially in getting to see Eichel in playoff form.
Just about to say Jack Eichel, yeah.
100% who comes to mind there, but there has been contributions elsewhere too, so it's not like they're just a one-line team. They're also pretty responsible defensively. So there are a lot of things that Vegas is doing well.
Well, they've got... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, here's my issue with this going up against Dallas. They're coming off of Edmonton, where, I'm sorry, Edmonton, but it's a lot easier to look good offensively against that defense. Darnell Nurse was horrible. Evan Bouchard's literally falling over in the neutral zone trying to defend Jack Eichel. Yeah, they're going to look great offensively there. Can they continue that against a Dallas team which is not going to give you all that free stuff?
I think they can be in the realm, and then I think their life defensively gets a lot easier.
I agree on the defensive side.
And I do think, like Megan was saying, like the thing about this Vegas team, like the reason I think it's going to be Vegas and Florida in the finals because they've got the best players left. They've got depth, and they have the highest end players. And when you start getting into this part of the playoffs, all things are equal. Both teams are playing well. Both goaltenders are playing well. Whatever. It's your elite players that break you through.
Okay.
Eichel, Pietrangelo, like they've got high end on offense, on defense. You've got that really consistent misfit line. I like Vegas at the top.
All right. I guess my question, as we're going to bounce around a little bit here, if he plays his best, I don't know if I don't know if Vegas has anyone as good as Jason Robertson.
If he plays his best, that'll be the first time we've seen it in 2 months.
And that's my point is, can he figure it out in the playoffs?
I mean, the Dallas is even in the conference final with Jason Robertson ghosting.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be a tremendous victory to them, but it's also a testament to the team that they built.
Absolutely.
You obviously you've gotten a Conn Smythe caliber performance out of Rupe Hintz.
He's been great.
You've gotten great contributions out of Joe Pavelski since he got healthy.
Yep.
You really I can't believe Tyler Seguin didn't score in Game 7.
Yeah.
He was all over the place, man. He looked so good. They look good, is what I'm saying. Like, I think they can
follow-up shot coming down the slot.
They continue to look like a quality hockey team to me, but if Jason Robertson doesn't find his game, they need that. As you get deeper and deeper, your star power becomes maybe even more important because you're only going against other teams that have monsters.
Yep.
Yeah. If Jason
they need Jason Robertson to show up.
If he can't match Jack Eichel, Dallas is in trouble.
I would agree with that.
Like they need Jason Robertson and Rupe Hintz both going at the same time, not one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's rewind a little bit here and take a look. Vegas goes through a Winnipeg team, which they earned playing as the top seed. That wasn't that difficult. Dallas has to go through Minnesota in round 1, and then Seattle takes them to 7 games in round 2.
A disappointing for me. I was disappointed in Jake Ottinger in that series.
Actively
he was
cost
bad.
them 2 games.
Philip
bad.
Grubauer had an .865 save percentage in that series going into Game 7.
Yep.
They didn't belong there.
Yep.
What was Robertson's? Excuse me.
I don't know, but it wasn't good.
It was dragged down by those two.
It
Yeah.
ended up like 903, I think.
So bad, but not like astronomically bad.
but not what you expect from Ottinger.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, this matters a ton. I know we put Robertson as our X factor because of what we just talked about. But if Ottinger comes in and shits the bed in game 1, Dallas is in trouble.
You don't feel good about it.
Yep.
Well, because that's I was just mentioning that I think Vegas has the higher end. That's Dallas's ultimate X factor. They have the best goalie that's left, or they should theoretically. We said that last round.
Highest
And
ceiling, put
He
it
almost
that way,
cost
yeah.
them. Yeah, highest ceiling. Like he should be their guy that can neutralize a lot of that. And after this last series, like your faith is shaken a bit in. Is he going to come out and give you that, or are you going to get a repeat of what you saw?
What are you going to get? Sure.
Really, as much as we shit on the Vegas and Edmonton series, like Seattle-Dallas really wasn't that much better. Like
It really wasn't.
there were a lot of games that weren't close, weren't interesting, and a lot of it being led by
Poor goaltending.
terrible goaltending.
Yeah.
It's this series is
Not trying to
tough.
get into the what if, but
Oh God.
Well, bro, I mean, look, okay, we'll just say this once. We'll do it once. It really did. We talked about if the Avs were going to repeat again, the road would have really had to break the right way.
Felt like a lot of things broke the right way, except for the Avs getting to where they needed to go.
the Avs were just cursed, man.
Had they gotten out of that first round, I mean, you would have had to beat Dallas. Have they ever beat Dallas in the playoffs? I don't think they have, right?
Yeah, they have once.
One time,
Once, okay.
yeah.
And it was 90.
No, it was in the mid 2000s.
Was it the San Jose year that they beat San Jose in the second round and lost in the Western Conference Final?
No.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You'd have had to beat Dallas, but like,
If you get through Dallas, you're like, oh,
you're
Vegas with Aiden Hill in net, and
you're on
the
a
East,
path,
you feel
yeah.
like Florida and Carolina are definitely beatable hockey teams.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really validated the conversation that we had all season long of the West is down this year. This
Yep.
week, nothing that's happened so far in the postseason has made me feel otherwise.
I would agree. I think I would say I think the East was a little bit less powerful than I had thought initially. But
I agree with that. I hard agree with that. I as much as I agree with both those statements, as much as it does feel like the West just had a down year, I do think that maybe the East got overhyped a little
that's a good
bit.
way to put it.
I don't think
Yeah.
the gap between the two conferences was as wide as maybe everyone kind of made it out to be heading into the playoffs.
And it sucks because like we're only going to see the last two standings.
Right,
it's like
right.
It's not really going to be a
No way to ever
referendum
know.
on it.
And then, and I don't know, maybe we'll get into this in the next segment, but the way the trade deadline shook out, Avs fans should be feeling a whole lot better
I want
about
to
that.
I want to
Yeah.
save this for later this
Okay,
week.
yeah, okay.
Because there's something specific I want to do with it.
But it's just a lot of teams that push chips in.
A lot of teams. So I put out on
the
Twitter
golf
after Edmonton got eliminated that
Got.
that they have $6 million in cap space to make changes. They've got a bunch of guys that need raises and re-signing and whatever.
Those 13 points for Evan Bouchard in the playoffs are suddenly looking real expensive for nothing.
The all-in mentality that has kind of taken hold of several teams, even in the West. Because you look at Edmonton, if it doesn't happen for them now, in the next year or two, it may not
It's
during the
blow it up
McDavid era.
time,
Yeah.
Seriously.
Vegas is like, you're looking at Vegas and you're like, Vegas is going to once again hemorrhage talent because all the LTIR contracts that they have been accruing to kind of dance around this are gone at the end of the year.
Yep.
Like it's a very all-in mentality for several teams.
Really started with Columbus a handful of years ago.
Yeah, I mean when they went insane at the deadline.
Yeah, he went out and got Duchesne, Panarin, everybody.
Ryan Dzingel.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that one.
Anyway.
Yeah, sorry. I just think it's kind of interesting that I think it increases the desperation. And you do look at Dallas, and while Dallas does have some guys that they are transitioning into, Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson, obviously Wyatt Johnson with that goal last night. Yeah. And he's 20. He's coming off a great rookie year. And they've got some young guys in their depth, their forward depth, the guys, the Ty Dellandrias of the world. Like Jamie Benn and Joe Pavelski and those guys are
not getting any younger.
You wonder how much high-level hockey they really have left in them. So I think there's a certain level of desperation from the Western teams that won't exist out east. Because you look at Florida and you go, Florida's going to be back.
Yeah.
Florida's not going anywhere. Carolina's not going anywhere. There aren't any major changes, major upheaval taking place over there. And you expect Boston will be competitive once again next year. We'll see what happens with Toronto,
New
whatever.
Jersey
But
should be on the up.
Yeah, exactly. The Rangers aren't going anywhere. Like there's a lot of really talented teams that are going to be back. And I think if you're looking at this Western Conference final, it's two teams that could be saying this is our best chance, our last best chance with these cores.
The Rangers are the one team out east that I do worry. And I mean, the acquisitions didn't cost them a ton, but I do worry that they got caught, smelling themselves a little bit too much. Yeah, and they maybe.
It's a fun way to put that.
Maybe jumped the gun a bit on what they gave out and what they brought back in. I think they'll be there next year, but I think they may have stunted themselves just a little bit. We'll see. But again, different conversation.
Predictions. Did anyone take Dallas here?
I actually did.
Okay. Sell us on it, Megan.
To be honest, this felt like a 50-50 coin flip for me.
As we all took 7.
We all took 7 games. So
I've got Vegas in 6, actually.
Clearly, the three of us were very confident.
And so what I was going to say, too, is I'm kind of split between both, but I don't think it happens in fewer than 6 games.
Okay.
There's something
I agree with that.
I can feel a little confident behind. But to sell Dallas, too, it's sort of what we've talked about is it's reliant on Ottinger and Robertson in a lot of ways, playing more so to expectation. And I think if both players can do that, but even if one of two can do that, Dallas stands a pretty good chance, especially Ottinger. I think that he has the ability to really change this series. And that's why it's a bit of a coin flip, though, especially with goaltending generally, the way I've described it, especially in the playoffs, kind of being a coin flip.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you started this postseason, if you picked every series based solely on which goaltender do I trust the most, you would have done really poorly.
Yep.
Yeah,
you'd be in big trouble.
And that's where
true.
I'm looking at this Vegas Dallas thing, and I walk in and I go, which goaltender do I trust the most? It's Jake Ottinger.
Well,
so I'm not picking it because I just watched the rest of this postseason, and I don't know what to do here because I feel like the teams match up really well. I feel like there's going to be a little extra for this Vegas core wanting to make sure that Pete DeBoer is not the guy that takes them out. I think there's going to be a little extra juice there where they're like, this guy sucked. We hated his guts, and we're glad that he's gone, and we're gonna prove how much better off we are without him by going out and eliminating his team.
The one thing I will say about Vegas is their offense so far through the playoffs is very not sustainable. To shoot at the rate that they're shooting, over 11.5%. And I get that some of that
Which
comes
is it,
from
man?
playing
Florida or
Edmonton.
Vegas? Who's the luckiest team? Which is it? Pick a side, Rudo.
And Florida's the team of destiny.
I'm just
Vegas is the luckiest.
There you go.
But statistically, Vegas is a team that it feels a little bit unsustainable to score at the rates that they are, and that's why they're going to need Aiden Hill, their defense, to.
You're
not playing
seen
against
it.
Stuart Skinner anymore.
Exactly.
You've seen it happen several times to Vegas where they've gotten deep into the postseason and they just don't score for a series.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter. I mean, you remember that Montreal series.
So and this is where for all and I still stand by a lot of what we talked about where like they've just given away assets for the here and now, but This is where all of that is supposed to come back around.
Yeah.
This is why you got Jack Eichel, right?
Yeah.
You missed the high end at the top.
Yeah.
He's played really well. He has to continue to gear it up because you're right. They've fallen flat in years past because they run out of offense. This is why you moved heaven and earth and set your, expansion franchise up to be this competitive early on, knowing
That's why
that
in 2 years you've given away guys
Right.
completely for free in Marc-Andre Fleury and Max Pacioretty.
exactly. It's this right here. This is why you're supposed to be able to do it. So let's see if he can do it. I also just want to double back to what you were talking about, AJ, about Vegas. Not only not wanting to let Pete DeBoer be the one. I do think a little bit of what we've seen out of Vegas just this season and these playoffs is a little bit of that chip on their shoulder. Where everything went wrong for them last year, missed the playoffs, and everybody counted them out. People had them finishing at the bottom of the Pacific Division.
I was going to say, you look at Vegas this year, and it's not hard to see Colorado next year.
Damn it, AJ, you jumped on my punchline there. And I was going to say, what Vegas is doing... No, I'm just kidding. What Vegas is doing this year is exactly why I've made the joke already a couple times of, I'm putting a lot of money on the Avs to come out of the West as soon as I can this summer. Because I just think Vegas is playing with some of that, you guys thought we were done? We'll show you how done we are. Mm-hmm. And there's just a little bit of that. Everybody counted us out. Nobody thought we could come back here, and we're going to go win a Stanley Cup to prove everyone wrong. And that's a scary thing to go up against when a team just has that drive and has that determination just kind of built into their coding. They're tough to beat. And you watch that Game 7 Aiden Hill performance, and you're like, yeah, these guys are here to prove something. Aiden Hill is slamming the door on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. He's doing his best Pavel Francouz impression.
All right. We are brought to you by the people over at Fubo TV.
Does Edmonton even have a good offense? When we really think about it?
I mean, the top of it's pretty good.
It was a joke.
The rest of it,
given that they're 2-8 against Pavel Francouz, Laurent Brossoit, and
you
Aiden
can make
Hill.
an argument they're bottom six. Isn't that good?
I make more than an argument.
FuboTV.com/DNVR or the QR code on screen to get yours today. You can get 15% off your first month of Fubo Pro. They've got 140 different channels. It's just like watching cable TV. It's right on your television. You turn on the app, you're watching, you go watch whatever you want. They have 1,000 hours of DVR included, so if you can't be there for your show, you can record it. You have it ready to go. They have ESPN, so a lot of your sports coverage is good with just that. You're good all over the place when it comes to Fubo. Super easy to use. Good price. It's better than your other options. I don't know what else to tell you about Fubo other than it's better than your other options. So go check it out. FuboTV.com/DNVR today. And then we're also brought to you by Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. We're down here. We're at on the bar set. There's 8 different kinds on tap just right to our right over here at the bar. So go get yourself some here if you're local, or if you're not, you can find it at your local liquor store. Go to breckbrew.com. Use the beer locator to find it anywhere in the United States. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. The playoffs are fun, but at the end of the day, we are an Avs podcast.
Can we stay on some eliminated teams? Can we just skip the Avs for the day?
That's fine.
Because we did we've got a bunch of Avs coming up. So
I'll say, bro, we got 3 months of Avs.
Yeah.
Whatever we want to talk about.
No, I just think that I'm watching Seattle last night.
Yeah.
There was a little neener there. It wasn't a lot, but it was a little bit where it was it's a lot harder to survive in the postseason when you don't catch all the breaks, isn't it? And then I started just thinking into I transitioned into off season where I'm like, if you're Ron Francis, how do you make that team better?
You get Andre Burakovsky healthy.
Well, and obviously having Berkey healthy would have totally helped them. Yeah. Is that the difference between them winning and losing the series? Maybe.
He gets you a couple easy goals.
Is that the difference? Is that the difference? They don't get to play that game because they won a first round series with everything that the Avs went through.
I know, but
and that's what I'm saying. You
got to talk about the series they're in now.
You want to get better. You want to improve. So Matty Beniers, year 2.
Yep.
Totally expect there to be some improvement.
Shane Wright existing.
Is Shane, what's the plan with Shane Wright?
Who's the Firebirds kid?
Everett.
Cartier?
Yeah, that kid.
What a success
What
story.
a fucking shot on that kid too, eh?
Yeah.
Holy smokes, that's a great release.
I want to see what happens with Riker Evans. He's been tearing up the AHL and as a more puck moving type of defenseman gives them a little
Which
extra
is what they kind of need back there.
It gives them a dimension that a guy like Will Borgen doesn't.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of curious. If you're Ron Francis, how do you approach this offseason? And like, is there a move out there? There could be, for the first time ever, there could be a goaltender or two that are really, really good. Connor Hellebuyck and John Gibson might be on the trade market in the same summer.
Can you dump Grubauer somewhere?
Do you think that after the performance that Grubauer just gave you in the playoffs,
I think so. So I had someone.
is that a priority for you?
I had someone suggest that Edmonton was going to be in on Hellebuyck and sending Jack Campbell back the other way. And I was like, I just think that takes. Again, I'm not like completely scoffing at that idea.
Yeah.
But I just think that you're gonna have to pay someone to take that Jack Campbell contract.
Yeah. It's horrible.
Plus, you're trying to acquire one of the few goaltenders that every year you can say
One of the 5 best goalies.
right. And so it's like for Edmonton to do something like that would be an astronomical cost. You would be paying multiple first-round picks, multiple high-end players, plus sending Jack Campbell back. That's just to get rid of his money. Or you look at Seattle.
Then he's an expiring free agent.
And he's an expiring UFA.
So what do you do in the next year when you have to? You're going to pay all those assets to get one run out of him?
And if on the flip side, though, if you're Seattle, you could absolutely sell. Like, Philip Grubauer going back the other way wouldn't be like a dump. You know, that'd be like, hey, this guy
that keeps them afloat, a guy that keeps them interesting to watch. They're not tanking.
How many years are left on Gibson's deal? It's 2 or 3, right?
Yeah, I think it's 3.
Does that make more sense to lock in Gibson for a couple of years? Maybe not being as good of a goaltender as Hellebuyck for Seattle, but it gives them a couple of years to build that core.
I think a guy like Gibson playing behind what Seattle does
could be really good.
I think he could be very good. And that was my thing with Seattle through the 14 games in the playoffs that we saw them play. Because, look, we don't get to watch every game every night. There was a lot of kind of like, I'm anxious to see. Megan and I talked about it a lot during that series of like, I'm anxious to see what they've got. What impressed me about them was they were the same team every night. They brought the same thing every night. And really, I thought they won and lost their games kind of based off of what the other team did. And that was what I thought gave them a shot against Dallas. Was this Dallas group has had a horrific track record the last 3 years of just disappearing for 2 weeks at a time and then being really good for 10 straight days and then disappearing for 5 days.
Yeah, they've been the off and on team.
Yep. I said, and if Seattle can just continue to play consistent, they're going to be good. The thing they're missing is the high end. And I think that's maybe where you're going with this of, in the summer, how do you move the needle? I think a John Gibson, Connor Hellebuyck deal makes a lot of sense. You can send Grubauer back the other way. That team is happy with what they've got in net, but it's not the same as what they had, plus a couple assets. I think you got to determine what you got with Matty Beniers. Do you think he can take the step? They need a star player. We just talked about that with, the deeper this goes, you need your stars.
They need a guy that, when they don't score the first goal, can get them back into the game.
Exactly. And I don't know.
I think there's a lot of reason to believe that Matty Beniers can be a true 1C in the NHL.
Totally.
But is he going to be the 20th best 1C?
Right.
Yeah. The 10th best 1C.
Sure.
Right.
Because the difference between those, we saw...
Shane Wright's another great
Well, and
call
I think with what we saw with the Buffalo Sabres this year and them pushing, to the postseason brink was Tage Thompson's rise there from, whatever you want to call Tage Thompson was before.
Good player.
To an elite play driving center that carries a franchise. It just changes it. It changes the whole dynamic of your entire roster. All of a sudden you have a guy that just... There's a different dynamic at the top where this guy's going to go out there and this guy's going to drive you to something special.
Megan, can you paint me a picture where Seattle sucks, or are you with these guys that they need to grow in these ways?
No, I can't because they're also deep. I think that they are doing some things well early on into having an American League team and development that, like a Shane Wright, I think his path to the NHL is one that they're not going to rush because I think they have trust in what Coachella is going to be able to do as well. I think that's a difficult pill to swallow, but I think what they did and what we saw even for Cartier and his preparedness for the NHL is a reflection of good things to come. Even in Joey Decord, the goaltender that they have in Coachella, they have some goaltending in the pipeline that is strong, that I think Seattle, what they do and how they're constructing their roster feels like it's gradual. They're not making impulsive,
They're not
explosive
pulling
decisions.
a Vegas. Yeah.
And for that reason, I think that's why they're going to be, in addition to the strong on-ice play that's pretty consistent over time, I think this gradual construction of the roster is also smart and is going to make them strong for a while to come. And it could be something that's a little bit in the works, like maybe it isn't fully realized for a year or two, but I think they're doing some things really well.
Ryan O'Reilly, I feel like, would be, if you're talking purely free agents,
So I wonder.
he's a guy that would make a lot of sense.
So I
fit-wise.
wonder about that. At what point does Seattle have too much of the same thing, and they need
Yeah.
something a little bit different?
Yeah, I think he's a little bit higher end than what they have.
I agree
though.
with you on that. I think he would fit well there.
Yeah,
but
because like if you could get a legitimate, measurable jump out of Matty Beniers, add a guy like O'Reilly, and that's your 1-2 down the middle.
Yeah, you feel-
man, I
you
feel
feel
like
great
you
about
feel
that,
a lot better about
And then Wenberg is your 3.
right. Whether it be internally or you go out and
Yeah.
add some,
I guess Gord is your 3.
you get an upgrade in net.
you have a healthy Berkey. Your top 6 now is McCann and Berkey.
Like
on
if
the
you're rolling
wings.
Beniers, O'Reilly, Gord, 1, 2, 3 in any in whatever order, that's a tough team to play against with some high end talent.
I actually wonder if they should go get Jonathan Druin as someone who can facilitate in their top 6 a little bit.
Well, and I was
but-
going to wonder more about a guy like Tarasenko.
So he was my
So you
my
want
other
another
list.
shooter up there?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I do think that.
You need the easy goal.
I think you
Well,
have
and-
McCann and Berkey for that.
Well, and you have Bjorkstrand, who had kind of a disappointing season. I mean, and then even down your list, you have a guy like Eli Tolvanen. Like you've got goal scorers there.
Yeah.
And I think adding Tarasenko would just be more of the. I mean, you just have another guy there that can do it for you.
It scared me.
But I don't know. I mean, they have a first-round pick. They have 3 second-round picks this year.
I will say a Tarasenko.
Those are assets, man.
Yeah.
There are going to be there are some teams that are in real bad cap situations that they might just be able to poach NHL players from.
Yeah.
They just need to hire an assistant coach that can run a power play.
Buddy, it's bad.
Their power play was so bad.
They're an interesting team, though. I'm really going to be interested to see what they do because I really did think that they botched the expansion draft
Yeah.
pretty bad just out of the gate because I thought there were players on the board that could have made them immediately competitive. They chose not to do that, and they chose to go the slow burn route. Hey, we're making moves that we think aren't going to pay off this year, but 3 years from now, we're going to really be able to cash in on this.
I felt that way too after the expansion draft.
To y'all's point, though, how many of their guys in their forward core from the expansion draft? Do you know the answer? I'm looking at it right. It's 5.
Okay.
Oh, really? Yeah. It's not great.
So they've already aggressively gone out and
Moved
remade
on, yeah.
that group because they signed a bunch of free agents,
They did.
Some
And-
smart waiver claims.
Yeah, that's the other thing is that they were really aggressive on waivers this year. Did a really good job with that. But the thing about the defense, the expansion draft they got right was their defense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because you look at that, that's where they got Alexiak, that's where they got Dunn, that's where they got Larson, that's where they got Susie and Borgen. That's 5 of their 6 guys.
Yeah, still their decor.
And now they're going to have to pay for that. Susie's a free agent.
Oh,
For my
yeah.
money, I think Susie's leaving, just given some of the things that I've heard, and one reason why I've been so hard up the Avs to go get him.
They'll pay Dunn too. They'll have to.
Yeah,
they
they
have to pay Dunn. He's an RFA coming off a career year where he's going to get some smattering of down ballot Norris votes. That guy is not going to cost them $4 million. Now they have $18 million in space, with no like Dunn is their big contract, and then after that they have a couple of guys like it's like Morgan Geeky, Ryan Donato types, like important depth guys for them, but bottom of the roster.
Do you guys remember who their pick was from the LA Kings?
Yeah, it was Curtis McDermott.
And I just looked back on that expansion draft, and I'm like, what were you
They
doing?
made some weird choices for real.
It was Columbus and Nashville were the 2 teams where I was like,
Yeah.
those are some interesting picks given the talent that was available to you.
Yep. They made some choices.
I just wonder if I'm Ron Francis. I'm looking at all those second round picks, and I'm going, I could combine two of these and go get
An Andre Burakovsky style.
well, and go get a Devon Taves, a second pairing defenseman
Sure.
somewhere that can help me out instead of giving Carson Soucy $4 million.
Right.
I can go get somebody with a couple of these picks. I can go get somebody on one of these cap strap teams. That
they have to move on
have
from
to give them.
something,
Yeah, and they're
yeah.
trying to get. I'm just floating it out there. If
You're gonna say what I
if Ron Francis calls Chris McFarland and says, "Hey, we really like Josh Manson.
Oh, that's not who I thought you were gonna say.
We'll give you one of these picks. We'll give you one of these second rounders." Don't you just say yes?
Probably.
I mean, you're immediately looking to flip those seconds if you're the Avs is the only thing, right? But
Probably. I'm only saying one just because the season that Manson had doesn't really justify more than that.
I'm saying don't think the Avs love the idea of getting a pick back. They're going to want a roster player, but
Sure, but that gives them $4 million to
I hear
do
you.
something.
I hear you.
And it gives them an asset, whatever. I'm not talking about Sam Girard there.
That's who I thought you were saying.
Yeah, I'm not going to have that. If they wanted to have that conversation, I think that I would be open to that.
okay. So what if?
But it would be more like I'm talking about maybe Yanni Gord here.
Really?
What if it's a scenario where you find out pretty early in the year that they can't keep Taves?
That'd move the needle for the Avs. Fuck.
I mean, well, so the reason I like a guy like Gord is because, and I'm sorry to just totally
No,
ignore your
you're
question. I don't mean to do that, and I don't want it to come across that way. But the thing that you like about Gord is that he's shown he can play your 2C,
Yeah,
shut down defensive role, take on hard matchups, and if you do find an alternate solution out there, you drop him to 3, and you feel fine about it. He's not a spectacular offensive player, but I think it would at least be one of those conversations where like, and it opens up the door for Shane Wright to make that roster.
Right.
And, they do have a guy like
shelter him
Wenberg.
at 3C
Well, and
or
they do have a
whatever,
guy like
yeah.
Wenberg that
Yeah.
can step in and be the 2C while Wright is your 3C at the start of the year.
Yep.
And I wonder if a guy like Girard literally moves the needle for them because he does play a certain style on defense that I think he's going to be better than Justin Schultz, and he's signed for a long time, so they could move that guy. Like, I think that's one of the few conversations around a Sam Girard that I'm like, okay. Like, I'm having this conversation.
Yeah.
I know people want to talk about, like, Willie Nylander and stuff, but it's
Not going to happen. Yeah.
it's just kind of a...
I wouldn't say it's not going to happen, but that's just a much bigger trade. That's
Well,
not
it's a weird fit for Toronto because
Sure.
that's not what the Maple
They
Leafs
don't need that.
But you look at what Sam Girard brings, and you think about what the Kraken could really use on their back end.
Arguably, Toronto should be in on Josh Manson if that's an option.
Yeah, well, and Josh
lot
Manson
of it-
doesn't want to go there.
I know.
a lot of it just comes down to how much does Toronto decide they need, like the upheaval. Like how much are they actually
Yeah.
changing around here? Because
We can talk about them too. They're eliminated. We can open this. I don't want it to be just Seattle. I kind of want to just use this segment to say there are some teams that have to do some things this offseason. And I thought Seattle was a really interesting one because they're coming off a season where there was no pressure, right?
Yep.
Now there is.
Yep.
Because
now
they
you got to succeed.
They got a game from the conference final. If they go out and they miss the postseason next year, that fan base can be real disappointed.
Good fan base, too.
It was all good. It was all fun and games this year, and everybody loved it. And it was all good feels right now. They're sad it's over. They're proud about how their team fought and what they accomplished.
It's like
But
the
they've
Avs
gotta
Nashville year.
They've got to get better next year or else. Because there's a pretty good chance that the Calgary Flames are going to have some sort of a bounce back under a coach that they don't hate.
Well, and
Which of the teams in front of them, which of the teams was already in front of them between Edmonton, LA, and Vegas has taken the major step back? Because I don't know if there's going to be one from those guys. So Seattle's path back to the postseason, pretty challenging unless they do something dramatic. And that's why I wonder if this is the time for Ron Francis to break that mold that he has set as a GM in his career of being extremely conservative.
Go out and make a move, bud. Yeah.
and you don't need to do what Vegas has done. Go make one move. Like you need one guy.
Go
at the
make
top.
the John Gibson move or
Right,
the Connor
right,
Hellebuyck,
right, right.
Like go big at one thing.
Yep.
And then go from there. But I do think that I think that this is going to be one of those off seasons that I am absolutely keeping an eye on because if it's another quiet one, I think it's going to cost them.
Don't disagree.
Let me ask you this on the Toronto side of it. How close are we to calling this a failed era for Toronto?
Very. You got
One
year.
more year, 2 more years.
You got one more year. If Austin Matthews walks,
Well, and if he signs a long-term deal, then it resets the clock.
totally. If Austin Matthews walks, and there's a whole we can do a whole show. It's already almost 2:30.
Yeah.
On the Austin Matthews thing, because there's a layer to this that I didn't really understand until late last week. He's got a no move that kicks in on July 1.
Yeah.
If you don't have that dude extended by July or by June 20th, like you got to make some decisions.
Well, especially ahead of the draft. You're like, hey, we want to maybe use these draft picks. If we're going to trade him and it's going to be a draft pick deal,
Right.
we want to use these picks elsewhere.
And
you don't want to use them on the draft floor to take guys.
Right.
You're not
where
in that
Toronto's
space.
at, yeah.
And
you're not in
so-
that space.
I'm not suggesting that Toronto's going to trade Austin Matthews necessarily in the next month, but like that full no move, if he's saying, I want to play this season out and see what happens, see where we go, I just don't know if you can afford that if you're Toronto. Could you imagine Austin Matthews walking out of Toronto for nothing?
Yes, actually. Because I think that if you let the no movement clause kick in, you lose a lot of your leverage in a deal.
Almost all
because
of
now the player becomes the one who controls the trade process.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there. I'm not interested in that. No, thank you. We saw this play out a little bit with Arizona and Jacob Chikrin, where there were teams he wasn't interested that wanted him, and I'm pretty sure it was Winnipeg. That he didn't want to be there, and so that lingered a little longer than it was maybe going to otherwise. And I think when you allow the NMC to kick in, you lose a lot of your trade leverage there. Now, you still have the player in Matthews. You're still going to get some kind of return that you're like, hey, I've got to get a legit return here. This is Austin Matthews here. Mm-hmm. But you lose the auction that you can set up for his services for 1 year.
Does 6th overall plus?
If Arizona wanted to do it, man, 6th overall, 12th overall, whatever else they wanted. I mean, what do you say?
Yeah.
Sure, have Clayton Keller. Who cares?
Right.
Have Nick Schmaltz, man. Who cares?
Assuming you're getting the extension, yeah.
Yeah, well, that has to be part of it,
Yeah.
because you're not going to pay the moon for the guy to walk on you, and that's where if you get to the trade deadline, they're going to be too good. They're not going to move him to try and save face.
Yeah.
They're going to be in the same position that the Islanders got themselves into with JT, other than they have a player being honest with them and not lying to their face every single day,
Right.
Because he's not a traitorous swine.
That we know of.
Yeah.
Yet.
The Matthews one is I didn't fully realize how quickly that one got interesting. Because we all know that his deal expires at the end of the year, but I didn't realize that it's like before the draft, this really kicks into another
I just
gear.
think if they don't move him before it starts, they don't move him, and they're just
They live with the outcome, yeah.
Yeah, and if maybe that's one where they move the guy. They move his negotiating rights a week
For a
before
sixth
next
or
year's
something,
draft
yeah.
for a 3rd round pick or something. But that's one where I just don't think that, because you can't win that trade. You just can't. You're going to get rocked in that trade.
No
now,
matter what.
Is letting him walk better? Obviously not. But I think it's the same conversation that the Avs are having with Devon Toews. We would rather take our chance that this guy leaves at the end of the year and we go out and win a Stanley Cup with him before he goes. And then whatever happens after that, we'll try and figure out.
What's hard, though, is that Colorado, and it shouldn't, because every year is different, but Colorado is just in a different spot because
They've won one, obviously.
they've got a cup. They've got a cup. Again, as right now today, they're still the defending champs.
Forget a cup. They made a conference finals.
Right. And so I don't know. It's going to be interesting because you say they can't win the trade. I think if you made a deal with Arizona and you got 6th overall plus, I think you walk away disappointed with how everything went, but you feel pretty good about what you get in return.
If you're losing Matthews and O'Reilly down the middle, though, your offseason gets real hard.
Well, I mean, I think they have a hard offseason either way. Something has to happen.
You're not wrong.
Something's got to give in Toronto.
And if you move Matthews, then maybe you have the money that you save. You try and bring O'Reilly back.
Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
We're moving him, one, because we don't know if he's going to resign, and two, because we're now going to use this money to keep Ryan O'Reilly and
I just don't. I just think that the NHL teams understand that star player trades like that, unless the player is hard demanding them. Like what happened last year with Makachuk when he went to Flames. The Flames honestly got lucky because and not lucky with the Gaudreau thing. That actually was a deep cut. But with Makachuk came in the last year of his RFA and said, "I'm not signing.
yeah.
Move me."
And Florida was willing to give them the universe for it.
And that put Calgary in the driver's seat to, I can make this decision. I don't have to be in this weird limbo all year that they just went through with Johnny Gaudreau. Because how devastating is it to lose Johnny Gaudreau and Makachuk for free in back-to-back years?
Yeah.
So they get an honest answer. They get, hey, I am not signing. With Toronto, the first thing that we heard at the end of the year was Matthews was like, I want to be here. I want to stay here. Okay, that means that you want to try and find an extension. You want to try and figure it out. It's a smart financial move because they can give him an 8th year that nobody else can. And if you're talking about making $14 million a year, that 8th year is a really, really big deal.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be able to make that money up in free agency signing elsewhere on a 7-year deal.
I've just been told he doesn't really like it.
So have I.
That on a personal
I
level,
didn't believe it.
When it comes right down to it, that he just doesn't really like it. It's fine. But he'd be happier somewhere else.
I have heard the same thing, especially in an American market. And I've heard this for 3 years. I've heard this. Mm-hmm. So it's why on our show we've always projected confidence he was just going to walk. Mm-hmm. But until he signs that deal, I'm still going to feel that way.
Yeah.
And I just think that Toronto's just going to roll the dice. I almost think it's smarter to just roll the dice and say, hey, we're going to try and win it next year with the guy. And if we do, when he leaves, then he leaves.
Yeah.
And that sucks. And we have to try and figure out and pick up the pieces and whatever. But if you win the Stanley Cup, it's worth, right? And if you don't, and it's the ultimate high-risk, high-reward game with a number 1 seed in his prime who's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the bar is going to open in like 20 minutes,
so
we also have to leave
all right.
here.
Sorry.
It's been a long pod.
We appreciate all y'all hanging out with us for this long one. Go tell your friends our previews are out. We'll chop them up and make them into their own videos here too, if you guys want to watch them that way. But we are out of here for today. It's Jesse and Megan tomorrow, so go enjoy their show. I don't know what they're talking about. I'm sure they'll let you know.
Maybe we won't.
No, maybe not. Mystery show.
Mystery show.
See ya for whatever that show is.